morning, folks. This morning I'm going to tackle what I believe is the biggest issue with the ToughCut 682, HQ682. Now, for those of you that have Ventrac experience or have been following, you already know that the ToughCut is Ventrac's most famous or most favorite implement. And if you've ever used one, you know why. It's extremely versatile and does a great job. I came from a 4500K tractor with the HQ680, which I believe was the original ToughCut. When I upgraded the tractor to the 4520P, they had some specials going on, so I decided to upgrade the implement to the HQ682. Okay, so to the point of why I'm making this video. So far, this is substantially the same machine, except for you'll notice that there is no kickstand on the 682. Now, the kickstand itself was somewhat controversial on the 680 because, from what I understand, many people would forget to raise it while in operation and tear it off or damage the deck. Of course, that's more of a user error issue, but from an engineering standpoint, if you can solve a problem for the user, then go ahead and engineer the fix. And so that's what they've done here with the 682. They've created a system to remove the kickstand and, presumably take away a failure point, even though, as I said, it's user-based, or failure of the user. Okay, so the kickstand's purpose was to hold the bottom of the deck, the back end, up off the ground high enough to where the hitch arms could be engaged by the tractor when it was disconnected. So in other words, when you pull away from this machine, the hitch arms carriage, which is these two arms here, and they're connected together by that little connector rod in the middle, they will fall down. So, next time you want to hook up, you lower the arms on your tractor and you drive into it and pick those up. So the kickstand allowed the lowest point of the deck to be raised. That way, when the hitch arms fell down, the tractor arms could still engage. And I'm going to demonstrate the issue with this setup. And so what Ventrac did is they leveraged the pin system that they had already designed into the machine to help with this issue of not allowing the hitch arms to lower. So you may be familiar with these pin slots here, and these are what determine the cutting height of the rear end of the mower. The caster wheels in the front and those adjusters, those holes there, can alter the height of the front of the mower, but back here you put the pin in the height setting that you want to mow at, which is all fine and good. And traditionally with the 680, you would set that pin and for the most part forget it. You use the kickstand to keep the back of the deck up. However, in this example, or in this model, the 682, because they removed the kickstand, we now use the pins to also control the height of the hitch arms when the tractor's not connected. And so if we can see underneath it here, we can see that the pin is holding on the bottom side of the hitch arm, and there's one on both sides. And so both of these pins, before disconnecting from the mower, have to be set in this lowest setting, or else the carriage, one side will be up and one side will be down, or if you don't set either of them, the entire carriage will fall flat. And I'm going to show that here. Okay, so hopefully that effectively demonstrated the, challenge with removing the kickstand. Now, all of a sudden, these pins have to be adjusted every time that the mower is hooked up and unhooked. And it doesn't stop there. And so once we have the machine hooked up and we've used the pins effectively to hold the deck in or the carriage system in the upright position so that the tractor's hitch arms can engage it. Now we have to move the pins again so that we can cut at the desired cutting height. And the reason we have to move them is because if we leave them in this position, then the back end of the deck here, as you can see, which is still flat on the ground, will be at the lowest actually it will be lower than the lowest possible setting because it will be riding the ground. And so we have to reposition the pins so that the deck can no longer fall that low. But it's not as simple as just grab the pin now and reposition it, because as you can see, the holes are all blocked by the position of the swivel carriage here. So we have to now, after we've engaged the tractor to the mower, we've got to raise the deck, reposition the pins, and then carry on. Now that the pins have been repositioned, we can see that the bottom part of the deck is held off the ground because of the hitch pin position right here. And now you can continue to use whatever height adjustment setting you want by using those different slots. So from here on out, it's regular HQ680 operation. But this whole, what I call the pin dance, is kind of annoying when you're in and out of multiple implements on a given basis. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to mention here about this setup is actually related to these pins. So on the HQ680, what we had was just a standard 1/2 inch pin with a cotter pin hole in the opposite side, and you would slide that pin in here and cotter pin that down. And you know, from my experience and several hundred hours of using it, those pins never went anywhere. And frankly, you never had to move them, so it was kind of a, if you mowed at the same height all the time, it was a set it and forget it type of a system. But because with this system and the height adjustment situation, we have to constantly reposition these pins. And so what Ventrac did is they abandoned the cotter pin style fixed pin, and they went to a detent style pin. It's got kind of a ring on the end of it, similar to these here. These are replacements that I'll talk about here in a minute, but similar to this in the sense that it had this loop ring, and then it just had a spring-loaded detent. Now the issue I have with that is I'm losing count of how many of them I've lost. Now the detents are supposed to hold them in position, and I don't know what I'm doing, or if it's just my burden to bear, or if other people have this, but I've lost at least 4 of them. I've lost cotter pin style ones out of this setup, and I don't know if the flip kit cylinder is hitting the cotter pin and knocking it out, and maybe the same thing here with the drive shaft guard. I don't know what it is, but what I finally discovered is this detent pin that has a release on it. I bought these off Amazon. I'll link them here in the description, but basically I think it was $16 for a pair of them, which is kind of pricey, but so far, fingers crossed, I haven't lost any. But basically this requires that the button be pushed in order for the detents to be released. And so now, coming from the inside, I can push in and lock in. They also came with these cable tethers, and so that way, if the pin does for some reason get knocked out, in theory, it will ride around on the deck and until I stop or notice that the deck is riding lower than it should. One other thing I'll mention about this, and it's just kind of one of the considerations to make. If you need the flip kit, then go for it. You know, it's worth it if you need it. But if you don't need it, it's kind of more congestion down here in this area. So when you're done mowing, this tractor is extremely hot. The exhaust is right here, basically right under these headlights, and so all of that heat is coming up here, and the only way to get to these pins is basically down here like this. Same thing with the belt, you know, so I find myself commonly resting my hand here and just doing everything from this side of the tractor and then moving back, because the SDLA lever is on this side, and so therefore I don't go on that side. I get off the tractor this way, manipulate the height, and do it all here. So the tractor's very hot, okay? And so you just have to pull these pins, and everything you have to do down here just is more congested. And so my point with this cylinder is that you can't hit these pins from this side, you have to come from this side. So it's causing you to just put more weight on this hand, lean over further, find these. And so I guess my point is, I like the kickstand a little bit better. I never personally tore it off of the machine. I found that it worked very well, and even though this system is very workable, it's a step down from the ease and the speed of hooking up the traditional HQ680. Now the 682 is substantially the same as the HQ680. I would say from a functional standpoint, there is no difference. In fact, if you own a 680 and you've got implement envy and are thinking about upgrading to a 682 because it's the new model, I would encourage you that what you have is as good or better than this mower. The spindles, the belt drive, everything is the same. Basically what they did here is they added that little bully bar on the front right here. They changed the tires out a little bit, add a couple little refinements there. Nothing, I don't think, functional. One of the biggest advantages is they put these hooks on all four corners, and so if you're trailering or hauling this machine, you can do that and strap it down with ease. I did get the flip kit on this particular mower. You know, it's one of those do what you want type of things. I don't feel like I hardly ever use it, but when I do use it, it's nice to have. I guess that's where I would leave that. If you don't have a problem flipping the deck, and if you don't haul it in a configuration that is conducive for that on a regular basis, then I wouldn't spend the $500 for it or whatever it costs now. One thing I will say about that though, and it's a little bit of a buzzkill, you know, the concept there is that you can flip it up and you can maintain the deck easier, and you can also haul it in a more compressed fashion. The one thing I would say about hauling it that way, because it would influence the way I trailer or haul this machine, is that when the deck is in the flipped up configuration, you cannot have this lid latched down with the rubber latches, and so you have to unlatch the lid, flip it up, and leave it unlatched. And so if you're in a trailering situation where wind can catch that lid, it's not really secured very well. So just be aware of that.